Welcome to the Agile Podcast, and I'm your host, Shailendra Malik.
Hello and welcome to the new episode for Agility Exchange podcast. I have with me Satheesh. He's the CEO of Kratos Innovation Labs, and he's there as one of the blockchain pioneers who started with this startup 4 years back. Congratulations to Satheesh for completing 4 years, and the startup is growing even size and opportunities and the products that they are creating. And today we are bringing you one of the best minds at work in the blockchain space who is actually building solutions and putting them into the hands of people who can use it judiciously as well as solve the important problems that different segments of industries are facing today. So welcome Satheesh and welcome
Thank you,
to
Shell. Thanks for having me on this edition.
So Satheesh, let's discuss about your journey, how it started, how you ended up with Kratos, the whole story behind starting Kratos, and your life before Kratos as well. Before we jump into the journey of how Kratos came about, and then what kind of solutions you started building, and how the ecosystem evolved with time. Please share.
Great. Thanks, Shell. In fact, blockchain actually happened by accident too. There's a reason why I make this statement. I used to work for a subsidiary of Rio Tinto, which is the second largest mining company in the world. And they compete with BHP Billiton. So I had a chance to build a center of excellence for them, operate it a couple of years, and then transfer back to Accenture before I moved out. So first thing I did after I came out of Rio Tinto, in fact a subsidiary of Rio Tinto, is to go to Block 71 judiciously on an everyday basis. Again, for the viewers, so Block 71 in Singapore is actually called the Startup Hub. We've got Carousel and a couple of other startups that came out. For about 2 to 3 weeks, all I used to do is sit there, grab a coffee, and look at the crowds. And I know people think, it's pretty funny, why you did it for 2 to 3 weeks. Because I literally had no idea when coming from a banking and then mining division, right? So what are the next? So one of the sessions where I was, just sipping coffee, looking at the crowd, you'll see all these startups, walking in flip-flops, and then the shorts, making sure that they're building some of the best technologies out there in Block 71. I heard about this Bitcoin. So at least in April 2016 that I'm talking, Bitcoin is only about less than $400, and Ethereum was probably $8 or $9 when I really got to know about cryptocurrency. And we just started looking at. I started asking people, what is Bitcoin? What is this blockchain technology? I can tell you that I used to get at least 10 to 12 different definitions of what is a blockchain. And even today, a lot of people think blockchain is only Bitcoin, which is definitely a good use case of using technology. Bitcoin, again, we are talking on a historic note. Just a couple of days before, we had this Bitcoin getting halted. And each miner would only get 6.25 BTC. But coming back to how it all started, so the problem I really want to understand is that what is blockchain? I didn't have an answer. So that's when it happened that MIT came out with this fintech curriculum, and signed up for that. And I made sure I go to Block 71 every day, at least attend the online sessions and look at the crowd. And then what came out after the 3 months online sessions with a couple of best MIT professors was that Bitcoin itself is not an end of blockchain technology that could be utilized for at least 100 use cases to start off. So we chose not the cryptocurrency part. That's when Kratos came into it. I had to choose between a Greek name or a Sanskrit name, and I chose the earlier one, Kratos. Again, for the viewers, Kratos means the god of strength. And mythologically, Kratos also is the sibling of Nike, so your Nike shoes. And his sister is actually Victoria, the beautiful lady. So there are a lot of stuff for that. In itself, Kratos itself signifies that you have a lot of strength and valor. So we chose that. That's probably one reason why we are for 4 years. Nothing superstitious about it, but just make sure that people are able to retain our brand, we have people, our customers calling in even after 9 months of the year and saying that, oh, are you Kratos? I said, no, I'm not Kratos, but I'm from Kratos Innovation Labs. I would like to. That's how it all started. I thought that's interesting how I got into blockchain, how we got into supply chain as well as into trade finance. We will talk about more of it, but I thought I want to give the background how this happened.
That's a fascinating story because many times people only recognize the startups that they have heard and the founders as well as the team, but not many people know the story behind the startup coming along. So thanks for sharing that particular interesting piece with us. So yes, during that fintech course that you were doing, I understand that there were a lot of ideas that came along, and you had to do a certain capstone project as well to see how much you have learned and what is the takeaway for you from the course. So from that particular experimental mode, how did you choose your first use case, and what was the driver behind that use case, which ultimately took the shape and form of Kratos in the future?
Correct. So that's an interesting question. As rightly said, capstone, we had to work with multiple groups the initial couple of weeks. Towards the last 5 weeks, we had to either choose alone or go with a group. So I chose an infrastructure project, again, for the main reason that blockchain was fairly new. It's very tough for people to understand why we have to go this route. Again, we could choose between infrastructure, marketplace, capital markets. So I went to infrastructure. But incidentally, what happened during that case, and again, this is the problem there from probably some couple of decades in the banking system, especially in trade finance. I want to touch base upon that for a minute. So in Qingdao, which is again 7th largest port in China, there was this particular scam that happened, and a couple of multinational banks had very big exposure for this particular scam. So what is to happen is that you'll have a trader that will claim that he would have, for example, copper mine or copper ore, or let's say worth $10 million as a collateral in one of the warehouses. Today, what happens, even not today, even from centuries together, before trade finance started, and we have letter of credit and other things coming in, or bill discounting. So if I had some collateral, I could literally use this collateral and then start getting new loans. So in this case, what happened is you would have a warehouse receipt that can be pledged or used as a collateral to raise a loan. So these fraudsters, what happened is they would normally go to a local bank, let's say ICBC Bank, Bank of China, within China, so where they have their credit reports or their reports about the particular supplier or the exporter. They would get the first loan. Let's say they get a 1 million loan out of a 10 million collateral, which is possible because banks do loan up to 60% of 70% of the collateral value. The modus operandi was they would take $1 million first from the local banks, then start targeting the multinational banks. So you would go to multinational bank 2, 3, 4, and then start using the same collateral, and then start raising it. So statistically, what happens is that.
So practically, you're saying they use the same collateral at multiple banks, and they leveraged it more than once.
Exactly. That's exactly what we call as a documentary fraud. And the reason why that happened in China or probably in Malaysia, India, and this Southeast Asian countries is that most of the warehouses are not connected to the LMC, London Metal Exchange, or LME. What it means that if you are connected to an LME, you would know that if there is a collateral inside this warehouse, you can publicly go and verify. That if you say I have got, let's say, 10 tons of ore, I know that it's under a London Metal Exchange certified warehouse. I can go and cross check, and that I could use that if it's already been collateralized, I wouldn't be able to raise anything. But what happens in Qingdao is 90% of the warehouses are not London Metal Exchange connected, which means if you knew them, the warehouse manager or warehouse owner, you could always get an original warehouse receipt multiple times. Because the banks only need a original receipt as a collateral. So that was possible in Qingdao, you would get at least 10 receipts, all are original, that are pledged with multiple banks. So at some point of time, what happened was that the collateral itself was not worth the loans that were taken by these fraudsters, and they disappeared.
Hmm.
There's a very big UK-based multinational company, a multinational bank that had an exposure of close to $200+ billion,
Wow.
and that again had to be picked up by the regulators, became a big issue. But then, if you look at the root cause, how these fraudsters take the loophole today, if you look at trade finance that goes back to 250 years or more than 300 years, when the first build is going to happen in Venice. What happens in the current context today is that the banks do not itself share information on a central network. Reason being that the competition is so high that if the bank B knows about the financing terms of bank A, they can outbid them and then get a customer out of it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say NOL in Singapore, or we have biggest freights available there. They may be working with particular bank that are probably discounting worth $500 million in a year at say 1.5% financing terms. If the bank B knows about that and they want to cut short at 1.2%, which means the bank A would lose that business.
True.
Although there is a fraud issue, but the profit itself actually far outweighs the fraud that happens.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of bankers I had meetings for a coffee. What happens is that most trade finance departments across the banks, they do write off certain percentage in fraud, which is a known.
Mm-hmm.
But again, they can't do much about it because they don't want to share the information on a central network. So the reason why I say I'm central network is you have a credit bureau reports systems, or you have other people coming in. Now the trust factor, whether the information is actually secure on a centralized server, has not happened till now. That's pretty strong statement because it has not changed when I took up this as a project. What came out as a surprise is that none of the banks were ready to share the information on a centralized network. So that is exactly where the blockchain came into, as a particular use case for a documentary fraud detection, where the very first submission from MIT was a product called XD fraud. Again, any individual or an organization, they're trying to defraud a financial institution. We actually create an anti-defraud solution that talks about if you are able to give a couple of parameters that we could encrypt and put on a blockchain consortium, it was possible to raise a flag if this particular warehouse receipt or invoice was already financed by an early financial institution. So this is typically a fraud prevention technology. What came out of the first product from Kratos Innovation Labs. Then is a detection, because detection would happen only after fraud is committed. Whereas we were weird and saying that we will stop the fraud, provided you are open to share some information, which we can guarantee it's encrypted on a blockchain platform, and your competition would never know your financing terms. So we had a lot of ticks there, which would say, we spoke to a couple of banks, they said it's interesting topic. In fact, if you look at project we've been now phase 1, phase 2, so a couple of things have already been done after we thought about this in 2016. So that's an interesting part how MIT itself, one of this takeaway from MIT became the first product of Kratos Innovation Labs.
Wow. So that's the perfect example of how to take a course and then take the good outputs or inputs from that particular course, look for the right use case, and actually build a startup on top of it. So maybe this can be a good template for other future entrepreneurs to look at it, that how they can get benefited from these kind of opportunities as well as courses. So journey of any entrepreneur is not easy. You build your first product, and once the product is ready, or at least the MVP is ready, and you are out there in the market showcasing it, what more challenges you faced and how that changed the product in its more mature form?
Sure, that's interesting, right? I can take the same XD fraud example. That the technology was far superior, was able to actually prevent fraud. We spoke to multiple banks. That all the banks said, fantastic, it's needed for the last couple of decades. Nobody has built it. But again, it's easier said than done. That okay, we go to a big bank, they say perfect, okay, you want it. The moment you step out of the meeting room, there starts all the pushbacks. So pushback for us, what happened? I can share because it happened to us really. So the first thing, banks said, fantastic. Where is your cybersecurity clearance? I said, what is that? Because banks, when they put some data on an external network or in a DMZ at least, demilitarized zone, right? So you're not in their network because obviously there are security threats out there. But I cannot. If somebody, it's like saying that can I sit in a house, right? You're welcome in the living room, but not in the bedroom, right? So something like that. So it's not a, banks are always worried about, okay, you can come to a DMZ zone, which is my living room, but I will not, unfortunately, allow you to come to your bedroom because that's my firewall protected. I said that's fair enough. The second thing is that, are you MA certified? I said no, we are not. We are just a startup. We just wrote this code, and I wrote the first version of the code. So I was telling them, what is that was happening. So all these things started coming up. So what happened? The pushback came to us when we looked at the cybersecurity clearance, MA sandbox requirement for 6 to 9 months, where we scramble the data, talk to the banks, at least 6 to 10, because the technology would itself not be useful if we don't have more people in the consortium. Because if I have invoice coming from, or where a receipt coming from bank one, we have to, again, encrypt it, put on a consortium blockchain, hoping that the same invoice or where a receipt goes to bank B, who are also in the consortium. But if it were to go to a bank C, which is not part of the consortium, there's no way we could actually, help them unless they do a lookup on our network and say whether it's there or not, right? We also build that channel, of course. So came back, then we summed up all this thing, came up $2 million USD. Okay, cost for cybersecurity clearance, cost for sandbox. Now make sure that it's hacker proof because we're looking at confidential data from a banking system. So that is where the reality of a startup comes in, where you get pushback saying that, okay, now the moment you talk about bank, you're talking about millions of dollars in capital before it can go live or come to a MVP level. So we were at MVP level, but then the reality is that if you don't have that much capital, it's going to be tough. Although one of the best outcomes, if we were able to complete that, was that the banks were ready to pay very decent licensing fee for this platform. The second thing, interesting thing that came out, again, it's very good to share, right? So let's say that we have prevented a fraud of 1 million invoice or a receipt. The banks were also ready to pay certain basis points. Two things we could solve. One is the loss, we prevented loss. The second thing is the branding of the particular bank, for example, or financial institution. The banks do not want to publicly go and say, okay, we have an exposure of 1 million of fraud on some invoice which you could have cross-checked. But because we were able to prevent that, they were able to pay them. So opportunities are enormous. Even now, I think there's a good opportunity out there. Project Ubin 1 and 2 have solved it partially with cross-border trade that happened, trade finance between Singapore and Hong Kong. But again, the whole world, we are talking about 13.8 to 14 trillion opportunity in trade finance alone. Trillion, not billion, I'm talking. So it's a huge trillions of funds move on a trade finance platform. And the kind of fraud exposure it has. Again, I'm not saying that 25% is actually in a fraud, but fraud exposure is close to 25% of this 14 trillion we're talking about. That's a huge market out there. Again, it requires regulatory clearance. You need to have all financial institutions coming in. That was the pushback what we had initially. And I'll talk about how we pivoted a bit, sustains. Again,
I was coming to that only. Yeah. So I know that over the time, one of your customers is the meat producers and meat sellers who have adopted this solution as well. So on one side, we're talking about trade finance, banking, you're going and talking to banks as a startup. And then one of your product adoptions happened in a meat industry where they have used this particular solution. And that became one of your strong success stories as well. So I would like you to just...
Sure, I'll talk about that. So yeah, as a continuation of what happened to XD fraud. So what we had to really pivot was that, again, as I said, there are at least 100 use cases for blockchain. We didn't want to go to the cryptocurrency route. we had so many requirements for ICO advisory. I didn't do that. Again, I have to respect our professor, Alex Pentland. They said, use technology for solving customer pain points than trying to put it in a cryptocurrency or kind of ICOs. That was a big takeaway. So we went to supply chain, especially in the food supply chain, where we looked at the kind of fraud that happens. There are multiple instances. You mad cow disease that happened in UK, in US, and you have the horse meat scandal in UK that people are actually thinking it's beef and they're trying to eat horse meat. We had a lot of scandals in China also on the milk powder, the infant milk powder, right? One of the things that came out very clearly is that in terms of food adulteration or contamination of food, itself is a 1.2 trillion market size in the world, which is very, very huge. Southeast Asia, we're looking at people really worried about what comes from other parts of the world because a lot of import happens, but they have no idea where it comes from, what they're eating, and how it is produced in the transit. The supply chain itself is in silos, even now, I would say. We'll come back to that. So when you look at the project we did, it's pretty interesting. So we met the founder of this company. He was in Singapore at Microsoft Singapore office. Again, we spoke about our initial things, what we did on provenance out of it. But again, it took them 6 months to call us. That's one of the reasons why I said people do recollect our branding, 6 to 9 months and say, okay, Kratos, okay, fine, let's talk to Kratos again. They called us. So I met them in November in 2017. And I got a call in May. And incidentally, I was in LA that time. No, it's just a coincidence, right? It's never planned. I got a call from Microsoft Singapore. I said, where are you? I said, I'm in LA. They said, okay, you have this customer in South Texas. Who do you want to go and talk to? So we went there. What is happening at least for the ranches in Texas? The interesting part of a ranch in Texas or South Texas is that they're all family owned. Today in USA, 86% of all the ranches are family owned. 6th, 8th generation we're talking. They are very proud of their own legacy, the way they treat the animals, the way they're coming. But what happened in parallel is that they had so much of imports of beef coming in from Brazil, from China, some of them from other parts of India, where they're coming in, where they exported. What is happening is that the quality of beef itself was coming down, whereas the cost also came down, which means the American legacy and the ranches were unable to compete with their imports coming in. What we went on to create a solution for them is they're all organic, again, meat producers, but there is no way to prove that they're organic to the person who is walking into HEB Plus or a Walmart, for example. So what we created, okay, now putting on a traceability system on a central server, which was not solving, because that could be tampered by any of the stakeholders in the supply chain. So we're talking about a breeder, talking about a feeder, where you have abattoir and you have now supply chain. There are 6 to 7 stakeholders coming in system. So we created RFID solution. We put an RFID ear tags on the cattle ear. We started tracking the hydration levels. Again, the law is simple. The more the animals are hydrated, the lesser they fall sick. So we went to that basic knowledge thing, and we enabled an RFID solution along with blockchain. Entire solution was built in 6 to 8 weeks. Now with the phase 1, we flew to Texas, me and some of my team members, sat with them, made sure that entire thing was put on a blockchain platform. One of the best things that happened to the customer, what we worked on. So there was also a company based in San Antonio. They were giving the solutions to multiple ranches in Texas. First thing is, because of blockchain, the evaluation went up because the solution we built, which we are proud of, right? At least they went up 4 to 5x within that 3 months period where we were able to handhold them. The second thing best thing that happened to the consumer is that we enable the consumer to actually verify whether it is organic beef or not. All the way to tracing back to the farmer somewhere in South Texas to say, these are the animals raised with love, with a lot of good food, good hydration, no antibiotics given to them, no medicines given. Again, what you're eating today is an organic beef. Again, the reason we could tell them because it's all blockchain. Everything was recorded on blockchain in the entire 6 to 7 steps, and we made sure that consumer can trace back what happened to this particular animal. So that was the biggest takeaway which we did. So we are thankful to Microsoft Singapore. In fact, they referred us to go to Texas and get these things.
Wow, that's how synergies are created in the ecosystem. Perfect example.
Yeah.
Okay, so what more use cases you have added in past few years, and how many different segments you currently cater?
Today, we are predominantly a food supply chain based focus at the moment, but that's not stopping us to build more use cases again on automotive. So a lot of spare parts that you buy today for your cars or your motorbikes, there are of them come as fake. So we have solved this problem for a very big German auto manufacturer way back 2017. Then we moved on. We are again starting for pharmaceuticals. So there's biggest problems. Your medicines also get counterfeited. Right? Most of the medicines, if they are expensive, they get counterfeited and enter the markets. We are working on that as well as next one. Again, you Louis Vuitton, if you buy outside a Louis Vuitton showroom, you're not sure if it's original or not. So there is also huge counterfeiting that happens in this sector. So we are trying to solve that. But today, the food supply chain itself is one of the biggest key takeaways from our last 4-year journey. So what we have done is we built a platform called Foodlens, wherein now we have made sure that marginal producers are the one who would gain for this on this using this technology. Then we also have meat producers, your dairy farm, your aquaculture, your seafood production, anything that we can cater to high quality food to make sure that the consumer, if they're paying 1.5x or 2x for a food product, if they claim to be organic, we can prove that it's organic. If it is salmon coming in from Norway, the technology can prove that it's coming from Norway, not artificially done in US, for example. That is where the key takeaway on Foodlens that we have done. And again, there's also a fintech part of it. I'll talk about it, but Foodlens is what we won a Best Social Enterprise Award for this platform last year from Indian School of Business here in Hyderabad, where our lab is. We're based in Singapore as a sales and marketing company, but most of the technology is built here in Hyderabad. So we won here in the Indian subsidiary. That's where we are focusing now.
Okay. Now I'm going to address the elephant in the room. So COVID has changed a lot of equations in past couple of months. A lot of startups are facing the heat. They are getting the pressure as well. But on the use cases side, what changes you have seen that COVID has introduced, which can be sorted out using blockchain solutions, or a potential new use cases that have come along, or maybe some old use cases got more priority now. So what changed due to COVID?
Sure. I mean, I think we are going to one of the highly unprecedented times of our times. So when I came to Singapore in 2003, SARS was there. So for me, it's at least the second pandemic I'm looking at, across this, right? And I keep telling my kids also, no, this is not the end. Every 5-10 years, you're going to have these kind of situations coming in. So people have to, first of all, work on their immunity, self-immunity, right? No point taking medicines or trying to fall sick. But coming to the startup context, right? 96% of startups do not have guarantee they will succeed. There's a rule, whether it's COVID or non-COVID, it's the case. But what COVID has really brought in, at least in Kratos Innovation Labs, where we work together. So there's one more. So we run a residential program where staff stays with us within a community where we are. We are taking care. So one of the first thing came out is the staff safety in terms of how we make sure that there's social distancing being employed. And the second thing, how do we survive? Right now, can we now, after 4 years, we just done for April. In April, there are a couple of things which are good things that happen, but I can definitely tell you from my own experience that if there are, because startup talks about 100 things, 90 things may not be in their favor. Only 10 will be in their favor. A couple of things. One is the capital. Unless you are prudent or you are revenue sensitive or revenue positive, there's no way you can survive. We have been in touch with to raise our next round. That didn't happen. Definitely, you look at and VC or investor coming and say your valuation now because of COVID and just because of 60 days of 70 days of lockdown, we hear VCs, okay, now it looks like you are crunch. Can we talk about a 40% of your initial valuation, 30% of what we spoke last year, December, for example. Right? These are things, shocks you would get. You are prepared for that, unless now a founder or a founders are strong enough to look at all these shocks. I don't think that is really possible to motivate the team, first of all, to keep paying their compensation, to make sure that for investment that are planned for product enhancements or backlogs would be possible without a strong discipline, financial discipline, I would say. So what we have done in this case is that we actually took up some revenue generating products, at least projects, for example, that paid half of our bills last 3 months. We rolled out a solution for a smart city project. This is actually not one of our portfolios, to be honest. Right? We have in Foodlands blockchain. One of the things that came out of Foodlands was that we also had an IoT products that we built up around Foodlands. Because we also, when you talk about securing a food supply chain, the logistics plays a very, very major role. So we want to make sure that logistics also is covered. So we built an IoT solution. But what we pivoted is that we took that solution and went back to one of our partner in Tata Nagar, where Tata's main head office, Jamshedpur. So can we now pivot it for a smart trash solution? So we built it, we got paid for that. So I was able to pay some of this. But again, unless you have those kind of connections, are ready to pivot a bit and keep your head high, COVID has been a killer for a lot of startups. But we are probably in the good books of God that, okay, we're still talking to you now, in the middle of this crisis at the moment.
So agility and the nimbleness of customizing your solution has been the hallmark of Kratos till now, to keep finding new segments and keep expanding over there as well. So that's a great takeaway for a lot of our viewers who are startups or who want to step into that space. That you have to be more creative and nimble on your feet and think about the solution side. What do you see? So we are coming towards the closure of this episode.
Sure.
One main thing which I wanted for users to know more is that where is the future lies? What are the future use cases of blockchain that you will see or you anticipate may get a lot of attention because of COVID or because of the changed market scenario, the surge in the dip of oil pricing that has come in. A lot of fluid things are happening in the market today. How that will translate to future opportunities in the blockchain space and the blockchain sector.
I would really touch upon maybe a minute or two on how we actually put a safety net around marginal producers. So when I keep using this word, what's a marginal producer, is that these are the producers that really don't big chunks of land. If it's a farmer, probably he or she owns an acre of land, or a small family-owned business from so many generations. Looking at meat producers or looking at milk producers, right? What is happening is that according to World Bank, about 70% of them do not have access to credit. It's very, very important again in the COVID situation today. Is that on one hand, we are seeing some of the farmers have the harvest ready, but because the logistics is totally broken down, there's no way they are able to transport. Point number one. Second thing is that now they are already getting to the next cycle of harvesting, which means they need money to even to buy seeds and fertilizers. Okay, we're talking about some countries. If you look at Indian context, they may need about 20,000 rupees, which is probably $400 dollars. That's also become tough, right, in this situation. What we built, again, this happened before COVID, but we are trying to see that how fast we could implement it in this scenario. Is that within the Foodlands platform, we have also created solutions where we wanted to make this 70% of the marginal producers more of bankable. When it's a bankable, we want to get them access to credit, access to insurance. So the chicken and egg problem that we are trying to solve, right? Because these people do not have your credit reports, which are actually a requirement for a bank or financial institution to lend.
Yeah.
So how do we break this? So we again looked at blockchain, which is a tamper-proof data, clean data that comes in. What we created is an alternative credit scores for this unbankable lower 70%
segment, yeah.
of the market size. What it means on a simple basis is that we give out an application called Food Lens, free of cost to the farmers. We don't charge to farmers or cooperatives. All we tell them, if they have a smartphone, which is again, I'm not expecting a $400, $500 smartphone, simplest one about $75 or $80, if they can, or they can always take help of a cooperative assistant to do the for them. What we tell them is when they're doing any tasks in their agriculture, for example, sowing the seeds, putting fertilizers, making sure that they do a soil test. All this task we started recording on a blockchain platform. Very simple to use, only 3 or 4 data points that they need, multilingual, icon-based. Just an hour of training would allow them to do that. What we came out after a couple of pilots we ran for again non-perishable goods like turmeric, cashew, almond, and which organic turmeric, for example, which carry really lot of price in the market. We told we are in a position to make sure that by using the blockchain blockchain data along with some of the IoT data. So we've combined blockchain data, IoT telemetry data. We started giving this information, feeding our algorithm to say whether they are now can be credited, become bankable. What came out as a surprise when we presented this to one of the biggest banks in Philippines in December before COVID, is that they said it is spot on that now they are opening up this 70% of the market, even in Philippines, that now they are open to use our technology for micro credit loans. They may not give out, say, $100,000. Not ready for that because the data itself is not mature. But they're saying if you are able
to $5,000, yeah,
exactly, 10,000 pesos, 20,000 pesos, for example, which they can make sure they can buy the seeds, good quality seeds. We also build deep neural networks, deep vision, where you can detect a spurious seed, you can detect a pest, for example. So what we did is, while we do the tasks, what they can do in agriculture, we are putting a parallel digital twin around their supply chain, around their pre-farm gate or post-farm gate activities. After 1 or 2 crops, we make sure that now they're eligible for lending, or they're eligible for credit, insurance, for example. That has actually reduced a lot of financial stigma and social stigma on these farmers. That's the first key takeaway. But second thing that would come out on COVID itself, like the governments that are giving us stimulus packages, right? If this data can reach, if the funds could reach the farmers or the marginal producers, that would really trigger a lot of innovations, and that's where exactly blockchain is ready for that in terms of how do we track the supply chain, how do we track their financial status, how do we track the repayment status. That's very important. Give 10,000 pesos, I give them $400 as loan. What is important is, are they in a position to repay back? Or is the government giving a conducive buyback programs? So now what we are trying to do within Food Lens is we're trying to bring in the buyers so that they can look at the data and start buying this particular
service,
produce for them directly. That's what we are trying to do. I hope that answers your question.
Yep, it does. It does. Well, it has been an enriching session. Time just flew, and we talked about so many things: how Kratos came to existence, what all problems you solved, what all use cases were prioritized, and from a fintech, you pivoted a bit and currently solve different problems in the space as well. So all the best for future years, and keep growing, keep expanding on more and more use cases and coming out with more solutions. Thank you so much for joining us on this session.
Thanks, Shel.